All right, so we're joined by WJTV sports reporter Blake Levine. We thank you so much for joining us. We are in the Arts AV career cluster. We got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools: Madison Central, Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us this morning.
Yeah, of course. I always love doing these things, so I'm always ready and available.
Yeah. Now, before we get into what all you do at WJTV and things you've done in television, you're from California, and then you moved all the way across the country to go to Syracuse University. So you've been on both coasts, getting ready for this great career. So tell us a little bit about that. You know, growing up in California and then going to Syracuse to get your college degree.
Well, funny enough, I am wearing a Syracuse sweatshirt right now. Uh, yes. So I grew up in California, and I figured out that I wanted to do broadcast probably in middle school. So I looked up what was the best broadcasting school in the country, and it said Syracuse. So I said, okay, well, then that's that. So I knew I wanted to go to Syracuse since probably middle school. And I know that's funny for someone from Los Angeles to say, hey, I already know I want to go to this big private school on the East Coast. But, I already knew what I wanted. So I was happy to do that. Went to Syracuse, did the 4 years, didn't go to graduate school, just did the regular uh, bachelor's degree. Got my first job in Tallahassee as a news producer. Then they let me be a news reporter about a year in. Wanted to do sports, so I went to Greenville, Mississippi, did sports there for about a year and a half, and now I've been in Jackson, Mississippi for 3.
Oh, that's cool. Now, I think one thing that people don't understand because they don't see it is that when it comes to television, especially in news or sports, or even if you're not in the sports, even on the weather or the regular anchor side, you've got a lot of things that have to happen before the light comes on and you go on. There's a lot of writing involved. Especially in the smaller stations, you've got to shoot your own footage, you've got to edit your own footage, and then you got to be ready to go. Have a camera in front of your face when everything happens. So, tell us a little bit about that process, because obviously we see the finished product, but a lot of planning and writing goes into it before we ever see it.
Yeah, a lot of people ask, "Where's your camera person?" And I go, "That's me." So yeah, I film everything that I use. I film. Now sometimes we use stuff that Ole Miss or Mississippi State will send us, a press conference or something like that. But anything local here, WJTV, we will film it and then I will edit it up. So the video and the sequence that you see is because I put it that way. I write all my scripts. I don't like when other people write my scripts, so that's fine with me. And then I go up on air. So even when it's 100 degrees outside, when we had those really warm days, I have to not even take a shower, get dressed, and I've been sweating outside. And you just try to do the best that you can because you literally do everything. They call it a one-man band. That's what a normal day is.
Yeah, and then and to me, it would be a lot harder to have to go off something somebody else wrote. Now, obviously, at the big ESPNs and things like that, they're going to have their own writers. But on the local level, you really are doing everything. Now, one thing I think is cool that you do, and if anybody that follows you on social media knows this, you really try to reach every fan base. And I think a big trap that kids that want to get into this fall into, and Rob J told me this himself, is that you have to look at what your viewers want, because at the end of the day, you got to have viewers watching you, or you're just basically talking to yourself. Because Rob J told me he learned golf and he learned NASCAR. So I know a lot of sports anchors. You may be, you're really familiar with football, basketball, but there's other people in the Jackson area that want to hear about other sports and other schools.
Right. Yeah. I think my Facebook about a year and a half ago just kind of took off weirdly. Like it's become such a thing, and I also take a different approach to my Facebook. I'm willing to be a little more opinionated and that kind of stuff. But I think that people enjoy it because people have discussions on my Facebook, and I think that's what grows my social media is sometimes putting stuff out there that I'm not defending or I'm not fighting about, but people start to go after each other in it, and that's when the post starts to blow up. Because the more interaction you get cross, the more the post will show up on people's feeds that aren't even following you. And that's the goal.
Yeah, and not only does that get you viewers, but it also helps the fan bases and the schools that you're talking about, because obviously with Tougaloo's big run in the NAIA tournament last year, a lot of people
Right.
wouldn't have known that if there had not been the good local coverage.
Yeah, no, and and sometimes we don't even know. I mean, we have so many teams and so many sports going on. And I think for me, I think high school is ultimately our most important. I know most people won't think that, but I think on Friday night football is more important than the college football highlights because for a high school, there's nowhere else you can get those highlights. There's nowhere else. If we don't come to your game and here's a school, Lawrence County in Monticello,
Yeah.
you never see highlights unless we so happen to go. We're going this weekend for the first time this year. Well, that's they may lose, but at the same time, that's their one chance. If Ole Miss plays at 11 a.m., people don't wait for the 10 o'clock news. They've seen it on the SEC network. They've seen it on YouTube. They've seen it on Twitter. I mean, outside of a select amount of people now, most of those people have already seen those highlights. So for us, I think high school is the most important. I think that's where, the most important thing. So sometimes if a high school doesn't tell us something, I mean, I don't know because I'm not at our 119 schools checking in every single day.
Yeah, and also on the smaller college level, I mean, we may see highlights here and there on YouTube, but we're not getting the interaction with the coaches. You had some great exchanges with Deion Sanders. You've talked to Fred McNair. You've talked to the guys at Delta State, Belhaven, Mississippi College. So those smaller schools also get a lot of great exposure, which again helps you guys.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I joke with coaches too. If you're winning, it comes a lot more. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, yeah, there's always going to be the great story here and there, but if you're 2-8, the chances that we're going to go, like I said, because we're so busy, going out of our way for 2-8 just doesn't happen. But when Delta State is 9-1, and I think that they should have the Connerly Trophy winner, okay, well now we're doing stuff every single week, and that's just part of it. It happens on the national scale too. All of a sudden, ESPN's down at Colorado's games every single week in the morning. At when they started losing, right? I mean, they were
Yeah.
when they were 3-0, they were there every single week. So that's just part of it.
Yeah. Now, what are some? Obviously, it was a big adjustment to live in Mississippi, coming from California and New York. But what are some other things that you've had to learn as a sports person in Mississippi that maybe people on the West and East Coast really don't know? Because I know, obviously, in the New York area, lacrosse is really big. It's not really big in Mississippi. And California, you have sport like water polo is huge in California. Most people here haven't even heard of it. So, what are some new things you had to learn as a sports person in Mississippi?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know because the main sports here are baseball and football, so I feel like those are yeah, I never filmed soccer before, so soccer highlights for high school, that was something different that I had never filmed. Yeah, now NASCAR seems to be a little bit bigger down here than it is most places. Although the Northeast, they have their tracks too, so
Absolutely.
they're actually very right. They're actually really into it as well. West Coast not so much, but the Northeast for sure. I'm trying to think because I don't know because basketball and football are still the biggest sports here by far.
Oh, cool. Now something else I like to talk, because obviously everybody that's with me right now isn't a big sports fan, and that's fine. But that's not the only part of news. So on a regular newscast, obviously we see you guys usually have the two anchors, the weather person and a sports person, and you may cut to some live feeds out in the field. How many people are usually working during a regular newscast?
In total.
Yep.
All right, so you have your one producer, but I'm sure other producers chime in from here and there. The assistant news director. So let's say 1.5 there, right? There's the main producer and then a half producer that's probably helping. Two main anchors, that's 3.5. Weather, 4.5. Sports, 5.5. Then you have a director, 6.5. And then there's probably 2.5 reporters. So we're talking about 9 people per newscast.
Mm-hmm. And the camera operators.
No, they're all by the director.
Oh wow, cool! I did not
So
know
yeah,
that.
so there's no camera operator. It's just the director is able to turn the cameras how he chooses in the back.
Oh wow, that's really
Yes, and they're
that's
and
a
they're on
technological
they're
advance
on
I didn't
wheels.
know.
Right, yeah, they're on wheels, so they move around, and he can control them like they're on wheels.
Wow, I
Yeah.
did not know that. That's really cool. So if somebody's interested in working in television, but they're like, I'm not really a on camera person. What type of jobs are there at the news station for people that are kind of behind the scenes person, but they're interested in the production and the production side?
Well, we have more people off air than we do have on air. So there's actually more jobs for that, barely. And it's also easier to move up in the business off air. So,
Oh,
yeah, well, producers are in such high demand because I think a lot of people like to be on it, right? But if you don't, producers are in such high demand that young people are being able to move up to some of the biggest markets in the world, whether they're ready or not. It doesn't really matter. They're getting to make that move. So yeah, there's producers, there's directors, there's management, there's web people that just write web stories and articles like it's like magazines or something you would read online that are better storytellers for writing. So there's a lot of different jobs like that.
now, one thing that news has that other jobs don't have really as tight on is you guys have deadlines. You've got to have things in because you guys are on TV at a certain time. So, what type of deadlines do you guys have when it comes to a broadcast?
Well, if you're late by 1 second, you didn't make it. So, people joke, hey, I was just 5 seconds late. It's like, well, there's no difference. I mean, it's like you could have been an hour late. It doesn't really matter at that point. You've missed your deadline. It's probably the most important thing that we do is,
Wow.
first being right, and then two, it being on time. That's why first and right is the ultimate goal. But yeah, being on time is probably the most or one of the most important things in our business.
Absolutely. Now, I do have some great questions from the students, but before I get to those, one thing I want to talk about, and I'm talking to a lot of people in multiple fields about this, and obviously being on television, I mean, me and you can speak in front of people all day long, but you've got to be able to not only write and edit, but at the end of the day, you've got to be on TV where people can understand you and you can speak. I think speaking is one of the most lost skills in America with high school students. And it's not that they're stupid because they're extremely intelligent, but in order to move up, especially in this business, you've got to be confident, you've got to be articulate, and you've got to really know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had a it might have been a little mean of me, but I had a kid reach out that he was interested in broadcast, and his first text said, "Hey man," and then he said what he wanted, and then the second text started with, "Like we are really into this," in text form. Like a lot of people say, like, and I said to him, I said, "Hey, when you're writing an email to somebody or a text message, write it like you're writing it to your grandma, right? Don't use the word like to start a sentence and all that." And he was just asking me how to get into it. I couldn't help myself. So yeah, writing and how you speak is one of the most important things. Not using the word like, being coherent, using basic words. I mean, you don't need to have a crazy vocabulary for this business. Matter of fact, the bigger your vocabulary, the worse off you might actually be. You should just be simple because remember, you're talking to people with third grade educations that are watching the local news. They need to be able to understand you.
Yeah, and and it shouldn't be, at the end of the day, people aren't trying to see how smart the reporter is. You shouldn't have to say something. I have to go look it up and see what the word means.
If you have to go look, if you have to go look it up,
play.
you're not watching the newscast anymore.
Exactly. Because because obviously, like we said, at the end of the day, you guys have got to have eyes on the screen or eyes on the phone when it comes to viewers. Because even in a medium sized market like Jackson, it's still competitive.
No, absolutely.
All right, so I do have some questions from the students. These are all ninth graders, and this first one's really good. This is London Jackson. She's a member of our band here at Velma Jackson, and she asked, "How do you deal with tight deadlines when you know you're cutting it close?"
Uh, that's a great question. Yeah, to tell her that was a great question. How do I do it? Just not freaking out. If you're on a tight deadline, it is what it is. I mean, look, you need to get it done, but if it's a tight deadline, ultimately you're going to get done what you're going to get done. And the reality is let's say you're doing a live shot from, something that just happened in the field. Just send back what you can and go from there. The worst thing is to freak out and do nothing. That's the worst. So how do I do it? Just put the head down, take a deep breath, and just go and just work. It's a nonstop work until that deadline hits.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You mentioned the technological advances.
Oh,
Scott and
and
Williams.
and keep it simple and keep it simple.
Oh,
Keep it simple.
absolutely. Well, you mentioned the technological advances too. Scotland Williams used to be there with you guys on the weather side, was showing us the things that are in the dang trucks that can send stuff back instantly. So as long as you
Right.
can get a good shot, you really can. So that's a big deal. Here's a good one, and this is Trayvon Willis, the younger brother of Tyshawn Willis, which I'm sure you're familiar with being in sports over here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, you knew what you wanted to be from a young age, and you pursued that dream. How does it make you feel knowing now, looking back and feeling like you accomplished your goal?
This is going to sound really funny. I don't know if I've accomplished my goal just yet.
Oh,
I mean, my goals are, I mean, there's a lot of different goals that I have, but yes, do I feel good that I'm on the track towards my goals? And a lot of people my age leave this business because, the pay is not great right away and all these things. Yeah, that I'm outlasting other people. Sure. Yes, that feels good. But I think there's just so much more that I could do. It it's like weightlifting. Since I know he's an athlete, it's like weightlifting. You lift 100 pounds, now you want to lift 110. Okay, you lift 110, now you want to lift one. There's really never an end. It's always something that more that I want.
all right. Now this one here is Ashton Garrett, who wants to be in sports broadcasting. He's one of our football players here as well, and he said, "I have a ton of questions, but the most important one is how do you do so much research on a person in so little time? And do you think in the future I could reach out to you and we could talk about broadcasting?"
Yes, on the second one, you can always reach out to me. You can just do Twitter, Facebook. That's really easy. And researching people. Well, look, if you're a sports person and you understand sports, then you generally know what you're talking about before we even step into it. Yes, learning somebody new, yeah, getting the name right, and then just giving yourself three basic facts about them. Just start there because you're not going to tell the whole guy's or woman's bio. Just go with three things.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like with you. I just had to know you're from California. You went to Syracuse and you used to work in the Delta. So that was three things I knew about you.
Right, and that you could just say over and over again.
Absolutely. Here's a good one. This is Samaya Williamson, one of our basketball players here at Velma Jackson, and she asked, "What is the hardest part about being on television?"
People commenting negative things about you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me as much anymore. Matter of fact, it really just doesn't bother me at all for the most part. I'd say, maybe like 5% of me is like, oh, come on. But for the most part, yeah, when you make a mistake, everyone gets to see it. And if your director makes a mistake, it's your fault as well because they don't see the director, they only see you.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I always see the people on camera. It could have been somebody that wrote you a bad script, and they're not the ones that takes the fall. The one that everybody sees does.
Oh, if video messes up, it's your fault too. Anything that goes wrong, the camera moved, it was your fault. So everything's your fault because you're the only one that they see.
That's awesome. Now, I think this is funny. I had two students hand me the same question at the same time, so I'll give them both of them credit for it. But this is Kyman Dawson and Micaiah Williamson. She's one of our volleyball players here, and they both ask, "How do you stay up to date on the latest news and developments within sports?"
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Facebook 24/7, sadly. Yeah, I mean that's where most of the people get their news now is Twitter and Facebook. And if some people don't like it, I mean I wish I would never really have to be on Twitter, but I do. And not only am I on it, I'm on it 24/7. It's just it's part of the job. Some people joke that I post too much. It's like, yeah, well, people like it. Somebody's going to want to read it, and that's what happens on Twitter too. So,
Yeah, and Kayla's a good friend of mine as well, and she told me that honestly, a lot of story ideas come from the public.
oh,
People will
what?
say, "Hey,
Yep.
here's something really cool. We'd love to have some coverage for it."
Yes, and the more you grow your social media, the more you post things, the more people start to reach out to you because they realize, oh, this guy, look at how much interaction he got with this. So I posted a post about a running back that had 200 or 2,200 yards and 27 touchdowns this year, and I was like, oh wow, big numbers. I probably had 50 different parents send me pictures like, oh, how about my kid? How about my kid? How about my kid? And obviously I can't do every single one. And I'm like, thank you for sending it. They're like, how come you can't post it? I go, well, it's just not, it doesn't really work that way. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, and then even on the news side, even away from sports, they did the poll recently in Jackson where people wanted to see more good news stories. And when you got somebody like Walt Grayson to do them, it's amazing how good those are going to be. But if people in the community can reach out and say, look, here's a great story that the community would love, sports or non-sports, I think that makes for great television.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing, right? People always vote, I'd rather see good stories, but then they click on all the bad stories. So it's really funny. Their mind tells them, hey, I want to see more good stories, and then their subconscious takes them to the negative stories. So it's a really weird fine line where, yes, if you ask somebody, they say good news. But if you track what they look for, it ends up being the bad news. So it's a really weird thing. It's finding that perfect balance between the two.
Yeah, and that's a great point because television, unlike other businesses, everybody watches TV. It's not like Budweiser has a commercial; they're only selling really to 21 to 35-year-olds. Television is selling to everybody of any age, of any race, of any
Yep.
income status. So it really is really hard to please every single person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, Here's a good one. This is Jordan Jobe, another one of our football players, and he asked, "What was the hardest part about breaking into this field?"
Well, you're applying to jobs with limited experience. It's the same as every job. Companies are scared to hire people that have no experience. That's a tough thing to do for a manager. But there's small markets. Greenville will hire, without experience. Sometimes we hire it straight out of college. So there are places you may just need to move to a different state.
Yeah, and then again, I think it all goes back to work environment and what type of experience you're gaining. Because I
Yeah.
don't know if you knew this, but Hoda Kotb, who's on the Today Show, started out in Greenville as well, and
Right.
now she's on
Right.
NBC News every morning.
Right. Everybody's got to start at a smaller step, and then it's going to go from there.
Yeah, and then you look at Brittany Bell too, who was on WAPT. Now she's on Good Morning America. So you got,
Yep.
it really can be, it's all about getting that exposure and going to a place. Well, you can get the experience where it's just like any other field. You got to show that you can do it if you want to move up within. You want to move up within it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, I just got one more. This is Leah Smith, one of our volleyball players here, and she asked if you could move to a place like ESPN, would you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the holy grail. But I think I saw somewhere they get 75,000 resumes a week. So it's
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure they do. That might be more of a you need to be good enough. You need to know people. You need to have a good right. It's not just one thing that gets you that job.
yeah,
Uh, your social media following. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they are looking for. It's not going to be based off your reel and your resume because everyone has a good reel and resume. It's like
absolutely,
when you're applying to college, if you have a 4.0 and a 30 on your ACT, well, there's a lot of kids with 40 and 30, they're going to have that. And then colleges look at what else you're doing. Are you playing sports? Are you part of the band? Or are you part of those? So same type of deal.
absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us this morning.
Yeah.
But before we go, a couple things. One, tell us where to find you on social media and when to watch you on WJTV.
All right. On WJTV right now, I'm on Tuesday through Saturdays for the most part. And then when January hits, I'll be on Sunday through Thursday. And that's 6 and 10 p.m. And then in the mornings, throughout the morning newscast. My Twitter is Blake_Levine. My name is Blake Levine. And then my Facebook is Blake Levine Sports Reporter. They tried to get me to change it to Blake Levine WJTV. And I said I wouldn't do it because for whatever reason, that branding has worked for me and I don't want to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you
They
got
tried to get me
WJTV
to change my name. They asked me all the time to change my name, and I go, no. This is going too well right now. I'm picking up more followers than everybody else. Like, no. Don't change it.
All right, now and before we go, if we have anybody interested in working in working in television, what should they expect right now and start doing now to prepare to get into this field?
There's a lot of independent uh, groups now that do things that are willing to use high school students and college students. There's a guy that runs a site that uses people, but it's free work. So it's just stuff, and you film your own stuff, and then he'll publish it. So you'll have something published, you'll have real stuff, but it's going to be free work. I mean, that's just how it's going to be at the high school level. It's going to be tough to find a paying job for that. Maybe college interns get paid now, but high school, it's going to be more about volunteering your time to do things, or taking your phone out and filming the Velma Jackson game and offering to do it for the school. There's all kinds of things you could do.
Well, and crazy enough is we actually have a digital media academy here on campus, as does Madison Central, and they
Yeah.
also have a at our Votech Center. So you can get experience right now in high school and go ahead and add that to your portfolio. That's what these stations want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting earlier can never be a bad thing.
Absolutely. Well, I know you're on a tight crunch schedule. We really appreciate you taking the time for us today. Blake Levine, Sports Director, WJTV News, right here in Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, thank you.
See ya.